Hello, it's Giles Whittell from The Observer. Welcome to the news meeting.
There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
Those children look very hungry, and other nations are now stepping up. I know that this nation is, right?
It's
here.
a humanitarian crisis.
Right.
It's an absolute catastrophe. And nobody wants to see that.
More than 100 people gather in Epping outside the Bell Hotel for the 6th time in a fortnight. Police have planned for this, especially given not far away, a counter-protest is on its way.
Well, China's famous Shaolin Temple has become embroiled in scandal after it was announced on Sunday that its top monk was under investigation for embezzlement and maintaining relationships with multiple women.
The Lionesses touched down at Southend, receiving a hero's welcome.
Live audience here in our London newsroom. To help me decide what should lead the news, I'm joined on stage by our narrative editor and resident Salt Path investigator, Chloe Hadjimatheou. Hello.
Hello.
By our deputy sports editor, Andrew Butler.
Hello.
Hello, Andrew. And joining us tonight is ITV News presenter and friend of the show, official friend of the show, Charlene White. Hello.
Thank you. What an introduction, Giles.
Yeah. So you, I hope I can call you a friend of the show, but this is your first time doing a live show. Are you feeling okay? How's the vibe?
Yeah, I mean, I very rarely do anything live, so I'm quite nervous.
Can happen to anyone. Okay, before we get into the heavy stuff, does anyone have a must-read recommendation, Andrew?
Give me one moment, because this is not...
You can't do show and tell.
No, I'm not going to show and tell. Yes, my must-read is from this afternoon. The headline is Burna Boy, Amazing to Dance with Serena Wiegmann. And this is Burna Boy, the music artist.
No?
You might have to get up and perform it for it.
He's an incredibly famous Afrobeats artist.
Okay.
Incredibly famous.
Great.
He was invited on stage at the Lionesses parade this afternoon because the manager, the head coach, Serena Wiegmann, is a massive fan of his, and no one knew this. And so she was genuinely looked the happiest she's been for a month, which is amazing because she won the Euros with England, the fact that he joined, because it was all a surprise, and footage.
Do you want to actually do this as your story? Because...
Oh, well, I mean, if it's going to win, yeah.
Chloe, any must-reads?
I do. It's a bit more staid than that, I'm afraid. It's The Go-Between, How Qatar Became the Global Capital of Diplomacy, which I thought was really interesting because we hear about how Qatar is behind the scenes all the time with America, Iran, Israel, Gaza, and Nesreen Malik in The Guardian explains why.
Has she been there? Is it actually Dateline Qatar?
Yes.
Okay.
Been there, talked to everyone. Very interesting.
Okay, good. Charlene?
Well, mine is has been triggered by an article that I read in The Observer back in May by Sam Friedman, talking about how the Conservatives became irrelevant. And he recommended an essay written by James Burnham back in 1964. And the book is Suicide of the West, an essay on the meaning and destiny of liberalism. And it sort of looks at the future of liberalism and the direction he thought it was going in 1964, and how the playbook has been used by several leaders across the world, including those who follow Donald Trump and also Orbán.
And you went back and read the essay?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I actually took it on holiday with me.
Was it like a pamphlet, or did you just click on it and print it up?
Proper,
it's a whole book.
I actually went to an online retailer and bought it, Giles.
Blimey. Okay. Are we allowed books, by the way, for... Yeah. Okay. Mine is... Am I allowed one?
You're allowed one.
Our Dear Friends in Moscow, a book by Andrei Soldatov and Irina Borogan. Essential reading for anyone who wants to understand what's going on there. It's about their friends who they left behind, journalists who went over to the other side. I think very important stuff. Okay, let's get into the stories. First of all, you have to give me your long stories short in a phrase or a sentence. What are you going to talk about? Let's do it in order from there again, Andrew.
My headline is, The First Time Was Nice, They Had to Do It Twice.
Thank you. Charlene.
Protect some kids.
Okay, and Chloe?
The stakes of statehood.
Okay, we're going to have a thesis on constitutional matters. Chloe, why don't you go first and tell us more about, what was it again? The stakes of statehood.
The stakes of statehood. So this is, Keir Starmer today called an emergency cabinet meeting to discuss the situation in Gaza, which he has been saying for a while is intolerable, but everybody seems to have been tolerating for quite a while. And an announcement was made this afternoon that the British government is planning on recognising the state of Palestine, which is and isn't a big deal in many ways. So I would pitch a leader about what it would mean. What does it mean for Britain to recognise a Palestinian state? And it would set out how many countries have already recognised a Palestinian state. The majority of the countries in the world, in fact, have recognised the Palestinian state. And does it mean anything? Is it just words? And I would say that unless there is something substantial behind that recognition, it doesn't mean very much. If you are somebody in Gaza today, and today we passed a new landmark, 60,000 people who have been killed now.
Since October the
7th, 2 years ago. And so I would argue that if you're a Palestinian, it doesn't mean very much unless there is pressure exerted on Israel along with that statehood.
Okay. It's interesting that what you're pitching is a leader, which in other jurisdictions is called an editorial, because we were talking about this earlier, and I was suggesting that this was an opinion piece that you were pitching, but actually, 2 p.m., this announcement, that's news too, isn't it? I mean, this country is, historically at least, a significant country, and the fact that it has now joined France in declaring that it will, hasn't done it yet, but it will recognise Palestinian statehood, that'll make some ripples. So we're going to have a news story along with this, right?
I think it is a news story. I think there needs to be an explainer behind it about what it means. I mean, obviously, I think the most important thing to note is that since the majority of countries in the UN recognised Palestine as a state and it got a seat at the UN, it's been able to do things like join the International Criminal Court and activate criminal investigations into Israel's behaviour towards it. And so there are real repercussions to this. And then if Britain has recognised a sovereign state, then we need to discuss what Israel's incursions into that sovereign state mean. What does it mean when Israel takes land in the West Bank? But there are real issues with it, because when we talk about statehood, we talk about a country that has borders, an effective government, a defined territory, the ability to conduct international relations. A lot of those things are really questionable. The Palestinian state is split both politically and physically. So I don't know what a Palestinian state means in these terms, other than if it is used in order to exert diplomatic pressure on Israel, which I think has been lacking. There are very few countries who have really sort of pushed back.
Charlene, is it a big deal that this has been announced today, and is it symbolic purely, or do you think there's some practical effect that it will have?
I think there's been a lot of symbolism each time a country said that they're recognising the state. And when France did it over the weekend, I think it was a foregone conclusion that Britain would follow suit at some point this week. And there have been lots of opinion pieces written about it, about the likelihood of it. But Chloe's absolutely right. If there isn't anything substantial behind it, then to, those children who are currently dying daily from malnutrition and from famine, it is meaningless. So, Keir Starmer's been under pressure to make some kind of decision, but I don't think this is the sort of tangible decision that a lot of the protesters are hoping for, because words mean nothing. When on the programmes that I work on and the kind of footage that we're able to get out of Gaza, Keir Starmer standing and saying, yes, we're going to recognise it, it isn't going to help them. And until we can see help coming, I'm not sure it's as big a deal as perhaps they'd like us to think it is.
Do you think his motive is principally to keep his party happy, or that he hopes that that is what it'll do?
Yeah, he's under a lot of pressure. What is it? 255 MPs signed a letter calling for the government to recognise Palestine, which is, you know, the need and want to do something is there. But I think even they know that simply recognising it doesn't do the thing that I think a lot of us want to happen, and that is to save lives. None of us like seeing those pictures that we are seeing daily from brave journalists within Gaza who are able to get those pictures out. None of us wants to keep seeing that. We want our heads of government to do something about it. And I'm not sure recognise Palestine is going to be enough.
I should say that the British government has also announced food parcel drops into Gaza, which the Israeli government has now allowed. But again, the UN is saying that that's not even touching the edges of the need in Gaza.
Yeah,
it's kind of symbolic again, and it's been tried, and actually it ends up killing people.
Yeah. Andrew, is it the case that, in fact, the UK government has arguably helped save lives in other ways, including preventing certain arms exports, but doesn't want to talk about it too loudly?
Yeah, perhaps. I think it's interesting for Chloe to pitch this as a leader column, because it was in fact the Observer's leader column this Sunday just gone on
the second one we've done on
this theme. And for the listener, the leader is like an opinion piece which represents the view of the newspaper's official view of a particular issue of public interest. And in terms of practical stuff, I mean, Charlene's absolutely spot on in terms of what you can do practically. We need to go beyond symbolism. And something that we say in our leader from Sunday was, and I'll read it verbatim, which is, there is a practical intervention that the UK can make too. The possibility of airlifting food and medicines into Gaza is fraught with danger, but must be pursued. Britain should also add an item to the UN conference agenda, a proposal to sanction the GHF, the Gazan Humanitarian Foundation. It goes on to say the UK government should be clear that aid distribution is not a business to be run by mercenaries. The GHF has helped bring death and starvation to Gaza. On top of that, it is now an impediment to peace, a stumbling block in the ceasefire negotiations which were suspended last week. The people of Gaza will not be properly fed as long as they are forced to rely on the GHF. It's time to shut it down and restore the safe supply of food to Palestinians. And that's something that we said in the paper.
That is the first time.
And it's something that, you know, as journalists, is important to kind of set out that as an option, you know, for the government, but also set out our stall to say this is actually what we think should happen as well.
You would then be at risk, wouldn't you, of stopping one form of aid distribution and having a horrendous hiatus before UNRWA could start up again?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, we've seen that when countries want to work, they can work fast.
Yeah.
And COVID response, the way that you can come together as Western nations, if it was just Britain and France together, it's amazing what happens when people want to do something about something.
And UNRWA has a long history. It has a lot of expertise in this particular field, so I think it could move really quite fast.
Even though it's not physically in the strip anymore?
It's not, but I think it has all the expertise, it has all the relationships, it has done it for so long. It would take time, but I think that what are the other options? I mean, today more than 100 people were killed again, a lot of them trying to get food. So I think it, you know, even if it stopped those deadly attacks, it would be enough.
So you're pitching an editorial. Here's a news story that I'd really like to read. Fly on the wall, verbatim or close to verbatim account of the conversations that Starmer has to have with his advisors on being pulled in two directions at once. Because, of course, throughout this, he is anxious, nay, desperate, not to be seen by the US administration and Trump to be giving too much ground to pro-Palestinian factions within his own party.
I think Trump was over here recently and he seemed to concede a bit. And I think that may have given Starmer the room to move now. You know, Trump was talking about starvation not being able to be denied in Gaza. And so I think perhaps he's opened a chink there for Starmer to move in the direction his party want him to.
So it's almost as if that conversation on the golf course went, go on, Keir, you can say this, I can't.
I think so. And Starmer, just to be clear, this recognition is only going to be happening if Israel doesn't do something about the situation on the ground. So if Israel moves to stop the situation or alleviate the situation in Gaza and stop annexing the West Bank, then Britain will step back from recognising Palestine. So it's kind of contingent. It's not even a definite.
And there is also a European aspect to this, isn't there? There's an important relationship between the EU and Israel, but involving aid. But so far, the EU hasn't moved as a bloc on this?
There are lots of historical and deep relationships with Israel, both in terms of historical guilt and a debt that Europe feels it can never repay. But also there are strategic relationships. Israel is an incredibly important partner on intelligence, on military hardware, and all sorts of stuff. And I don't think Europe is willing to move as a bloc. There hasn't been any pressure. There hasn't been any talk of extensive sanctions on Netanyahu, maybe on, settlers and very sort of bit players, but none of the main players. There's not any real pressure there.
Okay. And just before we leave this, if we were in this leader offering more practical advice to Starmer, making the argument that recognising statehood is largely, I was going to say shambolic, I mean symbolic, but that he could do practical things to help the peace process and Palestinians. We've mentioned Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and sanctioning that. But isn't it the case that the UK has already stopped the export of certain weapons? Does that make a difference?
I think it does make a difference. Again, it's kind of symbolic. I think they have stopped some weapons, which are direct hardware that is used in offensive terms. Right. But there's lots of other stuff that David Lammy has told us that is going through that is supposedly defensive, but we haven't got a list of that. So as journalists, we can't scrutinise what has been stopped going in and what is actually getting through.
And of course, you make a good point that even if it's ostensibly practical being weaponry, it's symbolic in the sense that it's tiny compared with what they're getting from the US.
Everywhere else, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. We will take a short break, and when we come back, we will hear what Charlene thinks should lead the news. Does everyone... You can do a bit of that. That is the break, right?
That's the break.
Someone puts an ad in the break?
I'll put an ad in the break.
You get to read it?
No.
Do I have to read it?
No.
Okay.
I'm not ready to do that.
All right. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Charlene, tell us more about protecting some kids.
Yeah, protecting our kids is one of the slogans that's been used by protesters outside various hotels which are housing asylum seekers, migrants who've come here on boats. And this current wave of protest started at a hotel in Epping, and they've been using these posters that say "Protect Our Kids," which is a familiar, using children as a far-right weapon, has been used throughout the 20th century by far-right groups across Europe. So it's quite a familiar trope that weaves through history. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it, I know that lots of people have spoken about it over the past few weeks, is I want to talk about the language and the impact it has on children. And the children that the protesters are not necessarily protesting for. So I'm talking about those of a darker hue, for example. There's been a lot of rhetoric over quite a few summers where we have had tensions flare regarding asylum seekers and migrants, and the impact that then has on children up and down the country is they do have to deal with that rhetoric. So I'm talking about what I would like to pitch is we do an investigation and we look into the data and look at whether or not there has been an upsurge in racism and racist attacks on those of colour within the UK. I can give examples of young people in Essex and young people in London and the sort of abuse that they have had to be dealing with, and with increasing numbers over the past couple of years, than the racist names that they are called by other children. We have to remember that children do not suddenly learn the language of racism amongst themselves. They learn that from adults. And I think in an era where, when we were growing up, we perhaps could hear conversations with our parents or, sneak a look at their newspaper or what have you. Maybe something would come up on the news, but that's sort of about it. Whereas a lot of the rhetoric and the words and the Facebook groups and the WhatsApp groups and that sort of thing, kids are now exposed to it far more than they used to. It's becoming a lot more of their everyday language. And I'll give examples of black kids in Essex who aren't invited to birthday parties because their parents of the kids that they go to school with don't want black kids at their kid's birthday party. So they can be friends with them at school, but they're not allowed in their house. I can give examples of kids in London who are at school and are being given, one example of a school that I won't mention the name of, where a kid is only referenced by a number. And when his father asks, why do they call you by a number? He says, because they say that's my slave number. So you sort of have these sorts of examples, and I suspect...
It's a school in London?
Yes. And I suspect that there has been an uptick, and I think that politicians on all sides do need to be wary of the language that they are using. They claim that they are protecting our kids, but only certain kids, because other kids have to deal with the ramifications of that. And I think that we have had years of perhaps politicians not really looking at the heart and the emotions of legislation, political decisions. They're not necessarily looking at the heart of it. Whereas you have those within the political sphere who are very good at getting to the heart of a situation and are very good at using language, but language which serves themselves and not necessarily the population as a whole.
So how do you do this investigation?
Well, we look into the data of it, and we do polls and we ask questions, and we have to be honest with ourselves. Yes, the data shows that overwhelmingly those who are suspected of child sex abuse, overwhelmingly are white. It's 85%, but we're living in an era where numbers and data don't necessarily matter when people are taking to the streets and fighting for what they believe is right. And I think that we have to look at, especially within more left-leaning media, is how we tell that story. And are we really looking at the heart of the story and looking at why people feel like this is the only choice that they have? But also looking at the impact it has. Because yes, you can use words all day long, specifically looking at a certain one individual group, but that's not to say that other groups are not affected by that. And children, I believe, tend to be the last people that we look at in terms of how language affects people. And we have gone through generations of not caring, but actually it's the minority of black, brown, mixed kids who have to deal with the impact of the language that we see and the stories not necessarily being told in the way that they should be.
But the numbers are really striking here. I mean, coming back to the question, how do you do this investigation? As far as I'm aware, there is one defendant and one asylum seeker accused of sexual assault and currently in custody, one alleged victim. According to the last report I read, there were 300 to 400 Protect Our Kids protesters, in other words, anti-asylum seeker, against the hotel. About 2,000 protesters on the other side of the argument protesting against them. And as the point that you're making is that out there are millions of people dwarfing any of those numbers, consuming social media that is inspired is the wrong word, but fueled by this stuff.
We can look at the example where the lies that were spread that Essex police were bussing in protesters in order to protest against those Protect Our Kids protesters. And that one little lie on a social media post dwarfed into something that was then repeated on news networks, broadcasting across the country. And then it was only once that lie is out there and being consumed by thousands and that then there's a retraction going, actually, and Nigel Farage said it in an interview, yes, actually a senior officer at Essex Police has contacted me and told me actually that's not true. But the thing about social media and lies is a lie spreads very quickly and has a huge impact especially emotionally on people, their attraction less so.
Andrew, what do you make of all this?
I mean, I find this particular story kind of profoundly depressing. If I take you back, Giles and Charlene and Chloe, to June 2004.
Oh, it's like story time.
I'm smaller than I am now. I was at school a stone's throw from Epping, and actually a stone's throw from this hotel. And let's say the lazier end of our PE teachers would occasionally make us go for cross-country runs if they didn't have a lesson plan, quite close to this particular hotel. But also in June 2004, the BNP made breakthroughs in the local elections in Epping. They won
National Party?
The British National Party. They won 3 seats at the local in the local council elections. And I remember we had assemblies of people coming in to the school to say, this is what the BNP stands for, just be on your guard, by the way. And that was like just almost like safeguarding us from the politics of the BNP. And the reason why I said this like profoundly depressing, because you'd like to think that society's moved on. You like to think that these sort of things are just things that you leave behind, perhaps with the naivety of childhood and all that kind of stuff, or you think that society has just moved on generally, but these patterns seem to repeat themselves as well. And I found it striking. I had to just double check before this, those election results from 2004. And there was the BNP's party press officer said this after they won those elections: we exist without the permission of the establishment who would like us to disappear.
They said that in 2004.
In 2004. And this whole, like, we are here despite what the establishment want us to be, is eerily similar to what we hear from right-wing politicians today.
Do you think this could just as easily have happened anywhere in England?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's neat for me, the fact that I went to school nearby, that I have some sort of anecdote, but I do think so, yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because we're sort of, I think, in the middle of reporting a story on another asylum hotel. Maybe you've already published episode 1 in Crystal Palace, where, contrary to expectations, we found that most of those living there were pretty happy with it, and there's almost zero local tension. I drive past it all the time, never seen anything like it. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is there are neighbourhoods and neighbourhoods in this country, aren't there?
Well, yeah, completely. And it's marked the difference between some places that are next to other places where you will be absolutely fine, because I think, I mean, this might be controversial, so please cut it out, and that's the benefit of doing a recorded podcast. But the difference between perhaps Crystal Palace and somewhere maybe 3 miles away in Kent might be markedly different.
Yeah. Well, we've gone deep into Andrew's depression on this. Chloe, as a news story, be competitive here. You've got a brilliant 2 p.m. today peg. How timely, how newsworthy is this?
I think it's something that we need to keep looking at. And I think what it made me think of, actually, is a long time ago when I was at the BBC, I did a documentary called How It Became OK to Be Gay. And it was about the moment that the atmosphere in the UK shifted towards homosexuality. And it completely came down to the government and legislation. And it was almost an instantaneous overnight thing. And it really makes me think the importance of these trickle-down effects of the way the government uses language. And there was a really interesting piece by our very own John Simpson, Home Affairs reporter, in the paper this weekend, about how immigration has overtaken the economy now for most people in this country. And I hate to say this, but Labour has done that. It's persuaded people that immigration is a really crucial, very, very important issue. I think it's done it because it's chasing reform votes. And I think it's going to backfire against it quite badly. But I think this is an important story. How we sort of flip it to be a lead, I think if we were able to find these stories of kids in schools giving these anecdotes, I think our readers would be really interested.
Well, Charlene, it's your story. Let's come back to the how you do this.
Yeah.
You advocated sort of an investigation which would be based partly on numbers. You'd look at the data. I'm imagining that you'd try to analyse what we used to call tweets on X and Blue Sky and that kind of stuff. But to Chloe's point, how, in practical terms, do you go out finding kids who've been affected like this to prove your point?
I think it's probably easier than you think it is.
Mumsnet.
Yeah. Basically, you just ask, and you know, if you maybe not AI, but if you're actually going into schools, I would hope that sort of you have journalists who work within communities here,
right?
Because I would be shocked if you would struggle to find those stories, to be honest.
But just in practical terms, camera crews at the school gates.
We don't have camera crews.
You don't have I have camera crews.
I'm talking about you.
Sorry, I thought I was picturing for you, not for me.
By the way, we do have Observer TV as well.
No, well, I mean, how we do it on TV is we would just talk anonymously and we would change their voice and we would do silhouettes. That's how we would do it. But I think that there are a lot of stories that people would be quite shocked about. I mean, I created a documentary for ITV, for CITV when that existed a few years ago, about how to teach kids about race, right. And how to teach them about racism and Black Lives Matter, for example. Because I was really quite tired of sort of people standing in the playground and sort of assuming that their kids don't know anything about it anyway because they're too young, so why should they teach them? And my argument always is, but why should my kids, I have to teach my kids it because my kids have to deal with it every day. So if my kids have to deal with it every day, why can't you teach your kid about it? So I think people don't always understand that kids are taking in far more than adults realise. And then when you choose to have a conversation with them about it, it's too late. So why then should it only be the parents of minorities have to teach their kids about racism when we all should be doing that because it's the right thing to do?
And in your experience, this business of getting face-to-face, microphone in front of kids, once you've done that and got past all the safeguarding obstacles and got the permission of the head teachers and the parents and everything, they're chatty.
Oh, I mean, do you not use Snapchat?
No.
Well, if you did, if there's one thing that kids like, it's talking in front of a camera. So I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay, but all right, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, no, I actually definitely don't use Snapchat. That is for the record. Thank you very much. Andrew, tell us public approval. Public approval. Noted, but it may not be. Andrew, tell us more about why the first time was nice and they had to do it twice.
Yeah, the first time was nice. They had to do it twice. My thanks to Chloe Kelly, via Anthony Joshua for that quote. Lionesses win the Euros again. So England on Sunday won the European Championships for the second time.
Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, just checking.
England last Sunday won the European. England last Sunday won the European Championships for the second time in a row, also becoming the first England football team to win a football tournament abroad. And Giles, I prepared a little bit for you here. It depends how you want to approach this story.
Okay.
I've got you effectively an a la carte menu of angles and stories you want to go for.
This is cheating, but go ahead.
Yeah. It's a good lesson that preparation is cheating in journalism, apparently.
No, you're just casting the net so wide.
You're brave.
You've got to make your mind up in the end.
So here we go. The goalkeeper. So we can go through the squad. The goalkeeper, Hannah Hampton, became a penalty hero despite being diagnosed at age 12 by doctors with a condition that means she has impaired depth perception, which is not ideal for a goalkeeper. The right back, Lucy Bronze, played the entire tournament with a fractured tibia.
Which one's that again? Which bone is that?
Leg.
Okay.
Also useful for football. Centre-back Jess Carter had to come off social media during the tournament after being subjected to horrific racist abuse. The other centre-back, Leah Williamson, who captained the team to back-to-back glory in 2022 and this year, in between tournaments, suffered a ruptured ACL and battled back to fitness. Central midfielder Kira Walsh considered quitting football altogether 3 years ago before winning the last Euros in 2022 due to also online criticism. Lauren James was injured until the last week leading up to the tournament but made crucial contributions. Lauren Hemp, and this is incredible, relaxed during the tournament by making the Beauty and the Beast castle out of Lego and carried it back very charmingly on the plane, all still in its set. Alessia Russo relaxed during the tournament by watching her brother Giorgio on TV because he was in the Love Island villa. Just 4 years ago, Michelle Adjiman was a ball girl for England's World Cup qualifier against Northern Ireland at Wembley, which was Sarina Wiegman, the head coach's first game at Wembley. And this tournament scored 2 equalising goals to become a hero. And Chloe Kelly, the match winner in the last Euros final, but again this time around by scoring the match-winning penalty, couldn't even make substitute appearances for Man City this season and was once again the hero and has been described in some quarters as having a potentially bigger impact culturally than David Beckham in years to come.
Okay.
But I don't want to talk about that.
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about the fact that the way that this success has been framed, which is that this is effectively legacy manifest, because we so often talk about women's sport as this is so great because this will inspire the next generation of women and girls in sport. And this is the first time, and we had a little bit in 2022 when we won the Euros last time around, and it was the rhetoric was, this is brilliant because it will inspire the next generation. And we get it a lot in Olympic sports as well. What have you done? Oh, I'm just so proud because I get to inspire the next generation. This is the first time I think where the media and the news and the lines that we should be going down is, no, this is them getting their flowers. This is them actually earning their right to stand up and be like, no, this is what legacy can mean. And we have got to this point because actually what's happened in women's sport, but specifically women's football, is that it's the culmination of years of investment, professionalisation, and a desire to actually make things just a bit better for people to increase participation that we've got to this point.
Charlene, so what I think I'm hearing is this is not a sports story, or certainly not just a sports story. It's about the end result of massive societal change. Do you buy it?
As a lead, not necessarily, but I do understand the story. I was talking to Leanne Sanderson, who's a former Lioness. I was talking to her yesterday, and she said exactly the same thing as you. It's time to stop talking about them in terms of inspiring the next generation. They've already done that. Now they get to just enjoy the spoils of the work that they've actually put in. And when you've got, the likes of Olivia Smith, who's become the first £1 million transfer, woman footballer in terms of transfer deal, she's the first £1 million transfer. She's gone from Liverpool to Arsenal. It feels like there is a shift happening. I'm not convinced that it's the huge shift that the women's sport would like, in terms of, it wasn't necessarily loads of people driving around with England flags in their car this time round, despite the fact that they were in the final. But I don't think the change is with those who are driving cars. The change has happened with that younger generation already. So, my son, who's 8, has been obsessed with the Euros and was really upset that I was here and not taking him to the parade today. So I was telling him to blame Uncle Giles.
That's amazing as an excuse, Charlene, because I actually went to the parade.
That's why you're just called Andrew and not Uncle Andrew.
Chloe, were you impressed by his prep?
I'll tell you what, you know what? All the stories and everything that's going on is so depressing. It's so nice to have a story to cheer about, to just feel great about. Yeah. And I've been obsessed with this story just because it feels so bloody good at a time when there's so much misery and darkness around. And so I'm willing it to be the lead.
Oh.
Is that allowed?
Yeah, no, that's allowed. I mean, it sort of undermines the whole premise of the show.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if it's time to take stock. What did it take? What investment did it take for it to get to a place now where it feels like it's not weird to be watching women's football?
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's...
Wait. I thought you were going to say it's not weird to be watching an English team win.
It does feel weird to watch an England team win, actually.
Yeah. But anyway, back to your question.
Yeah, I wonder if if you could do an article which is looking back at how many people had to fight hard and how much investment was put in, and what would it mean for that kind of investment in other women in other areas of life, for example, to have that kind of force behind them, and what would it do to other bits of society to have women elevated in the same way?
Yeah.
And the Athletic did a really good long read either yesterday or the day before, looking at the sacrifices of the parents of those who became the winners on Sunday. And just because of how little that they are paid when they are training, just how many jobs they have to juggle whilst also dropping the women off, or girls at that point, to various different clubs or what have you, which is very different to how the boys have to train.
Yeah. And to Chloe's point, I love the idea of looking at tipping points as well, because there's a few, and you could go to the fact that the FA just sorted themselves out a little bit. They opened up St George's Park in Burton, which has just professionalised the game both for men's and females to a great extent, and that's why the men's team is also performing much better than they have in recent generations. Could even look at the fact that Barclays Bank also increased their funding for the WSL, the Women's Super League, and so just increased funding from public and private also helped. Also, I mean, the ultimate tipping point was the fact, and you almost have to always have this in your mind when you think about the women's game, and it's still probably to our nation's shame, but the fact that women were banned from playing from 1921 to 1971. So they were still banned when the men won the World Cup in 1966. They were kind of cast out to having to play like leisurely games on the parks. But
what was the rationale for that? I mean, when they banned it in 21,
because it was unladylike.
It's not only that. I mean, women were banned from like running marathons and stuff because they thought it would affect their reproductive systems to run. There were lots of crazy reasons why women couldn't compete in men's sports.
Indeed. Andrew, one last question. We're talking about this as if it was somehow inevitable that England would win, which is obviously not the case, but wasn't it?
Yes, it was. They won last time.
Isn't it the case that in this tournament there were 3 penalty shootouts, and they, by definition, could have gone either way, and frankly, the team was lucky to get to the penalty shootout in each case?
Yeah, I mean, yes. You're right. Okay. There was some analysis been done on the tournament. There was a point during the tournament where England's chance of winning the tournament went down to 1%. Wow. Which is quite a remarkable turnaround. That was in the 77th minute of our game against Sweden when we were 2-0 down. That's when the odds basically dropped down to less than 1% of that we would actually go on to win the tournament, because also we would have had to win another couple of games, and then but the odds were never in our favour. I mean, I like to think that it was an inevitability because we won last time.
Either you support them or you don't.
Fascinating.
I'll show you my videos from the parade later.
We're seeing a new side of Charlene. Normally the detached, disinterested journalist, now completely tribal, shelving all critical thinking. Great. We come to the point now where you each have to say which story you think should lead the news. There's only one rule. You can't choose your own. We're going to go in reverse order. Chloe, you first.
I am going to, although I think Charlene's story is really fascinating and interesting, and I think actually the thing that shocked me the most was that it's happening in London, because I like to think we live in this kind of bubble that is untouched by this stuff. I think it's a really important story, but I would maybe want to wait until I had the case studies before making a decision about whether I would run it in the lead. And because I am just desperate for a bit of feel good, I think I would go with Andrew's story.
Okay. Charlene?
I'm going to go with Chloe, because I think there's a lot surrounding what's happening in Gaza that people still don't really understand in terms of recognising it as a state, who's done it before, and actually whether or not it's going to make a difference. I think that's an important thing to be able to explain to readers so that you do thoroughly understand it. The only reason why I wouldn't go for Andrew is because if we're talking, Monday's papers were full of the front pages with just those beautiful pictures of the women winning the Euros. Tuesday morning's papers were a lot about the morning after the night before. I don't necessarily know if we need it for a third day.
Okay. Andrew?
I'm going to make this easy for you, Giles. I'm going to go for Charlene's. Because I think...
None of this makes any difference anyway.
I think that it's obviously, it goes without saying how important everything and the goings on in Gaza are at the moment, but a politician saying, yeah, we will recognise this, but on some conditions, at the moment, it's like the proof will be in the pudding, which is, will it actually happen? Whereas I love the idea of something that is happening right now, which Charlene's spoken to, would be so interesting to be investigated on.
Okay, thank you very much. We now take a second short break, and when we come back, we hear what actually will lead the news. Okay, welcome back. Now I have to decide. I haven't a clue. I have a clue. This is so hard. Usually by this point, I've really kind of made up my mind, but I haven't yet. And I'm just staring at a page of scribbles. I'm really hearing in my left ear Chloe's plea for something to feel good about. And Andrew Butler, you definitely won in the end for the quality of your pitch and the quality of your comeback to me. Of course, preparation counts. I didn't know any of those personal stories because I was away when all this happened. And those individual stories of heroism and playing through injury amongst the Lionesses, brilliant stuff, good pitching, not going to lead. So it's a question of whether it's today's emergency cabinet meeting and the arguably symbolic decision by Keir Starmer contingent upon events to recognise the state of Palestine, Palestinian statehood, or the protests in the Epping Hotel. And I am going to buy your argument, Chloe, that this is largely a symbolic move. I think it's very interesting because of the position that Starmer finds himself in, torn between his own party, the need to preserve the so-called special relationship, which is in a weird state, and his conscience. I don't doubt that he's a good person who wants to do right, or at least better, by the Palestinian people. But in the end, this was foreseen. It was, in a sense, overshadowed by France making the move first. We don't know if it's going to happen in the end, though I accept that today's announcement will precipitate a discussion on a new level of what statehood would mean. But actually, tonight, if we were a TV station, or on Monday, or on Sunday, given that we're a Sunday paper, we're going to lead with the protests in Epping because they tell us so much about the society we are and are in danger of becoming. The only component of that story that I would big up is one that we talked about before, but not actually much, on the show, as it were, which is the role of social media in turning it from a very local story to an undeniably national one. So, Charlene, thank you. Your story will lead the news. That's my decision. But, seeing as we've got an audience here, let's find out what you think. Did I make the right call? Who wants to start? And I'm going to start by putting on my new Specsavers specials and seeing if we've got any hands up at the back. We will come to you at the front. But yes, in the short-sleeved shirt with the short-sleeved blue shirt. Yep, right there. Let's get a microphone.
Can Can I ask?
Wait till you get the mic and tell us who you are.
Yes, can you say your name as well, please?
What's your name?
My name's Jason Nissy. I was very interested in Chloe's story because you're looking at it from a domestic view of what is happening in Gaza. What I'd really like to read, and what I haven't read anywhere, is how does this end? How do you sort this out in a lasting, long-term way? Do you need Hamas to give up its demand that the Israeli state doesn't exist? Do you have to get rid of Netanyahu, which almost certainly you do? How do you get to peace? Every time you've got near peace, somebody's gone and messed it up, often by killing the leaders who have brought the peace. So is there a roadmap to peace, or do we just end up in an eternal circle? And that's why what I would read, not, what it means the UK, because probably Netanyahu doesn't give a stuff about what the UK does.
I think everyone would like to read that. I think the reason that we haven't read it is nobody can answer any of those questions. Is that right? What do you guys think?
I mean, I think there are some answers to those questions, but I think, we can't predict 100% what will happen. I think the Israeli population would like the war to end. 80% of Israelis are done with the war since March. There haven't been any military victories, really, and there haven't been any release of hostages won by the Israelis. And I think most people think that this is expedient to Netanyahu's political needs and his needs to avoid criminal prosecution at this point. So, but where it ends is really, really hard to predict. If Netanyahu gets his way, and for the moment he's got a 3-month recess of parliament in Israel, and so really the wheels are off. He can do what he wants, pretty much. If it keeps going in his direction, then I think we may well see a concentration of Palestinians into some kind of camp and possibly an expulsion.
Jason, in a nutshell, how do you think it ends?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm not an expert. One thing I haven't read, except for one really, really good piece by Reuters about 6 weeks ago, is what the Palestinians really want. Nobody's asking, obviously, they want the end of starvation, they want the end of incursions into the West Bank, all of that thing. But there's a lot of them who are heartily sick of Hamas. And remember, there hasn't been an election since 2007 in Palestine. So on that basis, we would still have Tony Blair as our Prime Minister in the UK.
Yeah.
So what we get a lot of what's happening in Israel and the pressures on Israel and what the Israeli army are doing, which is horrendous. But we don't get the analysis of what's really happening with the Palestinians.
Okay.
And you need two sides to sort this out. And it goes back to the article you mentioned earlier about Qatar being very, very powerful. They're possibly the only people who can actually speak to the Palestinians.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Good spot, that Reuters piece. Let's bring down to the front. We'll go in this order. You, sir, and then in the middle, and then Paul.
Thank you.
And if, by the way, any stories that we haven't discussed.
Okay. Just a couple of comments on all of the stories, if I may. Firstly,
let's be quick. We want to hear everybody, and we don't have that long.
About the football.
Yeah.
The one thing everybody's forgotten about is the fact is they charge peanuts to get to a game in the women's tournament. If they were charging the same rate as the charge for men's football, would you get the same interest level? I have to admit, I actually went to the semi-final and I paid €25 for a ticket, which included free transport from anywhere in Switzerland. I went to the World Club competition in New York. It cost me over $1,000 for a seat and didn't include any transport. Believe me, the money is coming from men's football to subsidise everything. And if people were being charged for what is a really attractive game, would they be the same interest? On the question of the Charlene's point, don't forget, It's a very local story. You've got readers all over the UK. I'm not sure that somebody on Tyneside, where I'm from originally, somebody in Wales, would actually have the slightest interest, because they've got their issues as problems as well, which are different, as dramatic in many cases.
Well,
you can tell different
there
stories. The other
isn't-
point, in terms of...
It isn't just in Epping. Epping has sparked protest up and down the country outside hotels.
Yeah. But I think you've got to be very careful about making it too local, because there are problems everywhere, and they're very similar, but different.
Okay, and very quickly, your last one.
On the last point about Israel, don't forget, the majority of Israelis actually don't want the war.
Yep.
And you've got to remember there are problems between the state of Israel and all the problems that ordinary Israelis and regular Jews everywhere are facing. So you've got to be very careful about ensuring that you differentiate between the problems, which a lot of people don't understand, especially some of the protesters, who are making life a lot more difficult to actually find a solution by attacking ordinary, everyday Israelis, and to be honest, even worse, attacking everyday Jews who have nothing to do with the situation. And somehow or other, you've got to try to work that out as to how to get on the side of the Israelis, who mostly, I think, want peace and want to stop it all going.
As Chloe pointed out,
Yeah,
right?
You've got to try and do that.
Yep.
I think undoubtedly Gaza is the biggest story, but there is more than one side to this. Earlier, we were talking about Qatar and the importance of Qatar in negotiations. Qatar did negotiate a deal between Israel and Hamas, in which they were going to release 10 of the hostages, and Israel was going to release a large number of prisoners, and were going to withdraw to a specific place within Gaza for the majority of it, and there was going to be unlimited aid released as part of the peace deal. Israel actually made further concessions, and we redrew the map, so they withdraw further than they initially offered, and that was agreed by both sides. Hamas then said, well, we need to talk to the people who are actually fighting in Gaza. And when they got through to the people fighting in Gaza, they said, no, we're not happy to agree to it. We want Israel to withdraw completely from Gaza. And the whole peace deal fell through.
This is several months ago, right?
No, this was very recently. This was literally a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I see. It just sounds so depressingly similar to what happened several months ago.
Yes, no, okay, but I mean, the point is that the US then said it was Hamas are not interested in peace, so they then withdrew. And, we've got to face the reality that if that peace deal had been accepted, then we would now have a ceasefire, there would be no fighting, there would be unlimited aid. And we have to accept that. And when we're talking about now recognising a Palestinian state, what we're basically doing is rewarding Hamas for not agreeing to the peace deal. That's what we're doing.
That's certainly a point of view. Let's let Paul have a go.
Hi, Paul Atherton. New news story, and based in about 800 years ago, so it's prescient and modern. Magna Carta, 1225. So tomorrow at the Society of Antiquaries, they are opening an exhibition that looks at Magna Carta from 1225. And the reason that that's significant is it included the Forest Charter. And I have been trying to wonder why subsequent politicians have never repealed the Vagrancy Act. And of course, we had a Tory government say they were doing it, and just a few weeks ago, a Labour government saying they were going to do it. And the Forest Charter is why. So if you remove the Vagrancy Act, it defaults back to the Forest Charter, which lets free people live wherever they choose and to move across the land. And I think that's highlighted well in that exhibition.
Okay.
More importantly, is something that really does need to be addressed.
Great, thank you.
To be the bad guy and
We
wrap
got-
things up.
We have one more. We've had all male. We've had all male voices. Yes, please. Right here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really striking that all three of your pictures really involve children. We're all incredibly distressed at seeing starving children in Gaza. We're all incredibly distressed that our children are having to cope with racism in schools. And we're all so thrilled that our children get to see the wonderful example of the Lionesses. I just wanted to ask, with the voting age going down to 16, should the Observer and your news media group as a whole be doing more to actually centre young voices? Should we be hearing from young children in schools?
Great question. And we will think about it, but we have run out of time. I mean, I'm sure the answer is yes. I'm sorry. I shouldn't.
I haven't that sorry, can I interrupt? Because I believe that we did say that we can.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to use my boss power. I was getting it from my right-hand side here.
Okay, thank you. My name's Wendy Williams, and I've listened to all stories today, but I just wanted to make it very short, and I did an acronym of Epping based on its current situation, and hopefully it will broaden people's minds and think about how young people are growing up today knowing that they've either got to work harder, try to prove who they are before they can even arrive at the table to prove that they've got something, decent to share. And how do you prepare them? So in terms of my acronym for Epping, I went evolving, protests, people, ignorance, negative, and glee.
Right. I've written it all down. Big fan of acronyms. Thank you so much. And thank you, Charlene. No.
No retakes, it's perfect.
Okay. So, Charlene, Chloe, and Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Charles. Thank you, Charles.
And thank you to everyone here in the newsroom. We're taking a month off from hosting live shows, but fear not, we'll be back in September. If you want to join us, keep an eye on observer.co.uk/book for all future events. We also release episodes twice a week of the kind that Charlene has been to before that we record in the studio. Search for The News Meeting wherever you get your podcasts and follow the feed so you don't miss an episode. We'll be back on Friday, but until then, goodbye.